Good morning. I'm going to continue today, Sunday the 16th of August 2020, with Dr. Vernon Coleman's book, published by David YATES, on the vaccines. I've already done a small amount of reading and I can't do a lot at a time, but we stopped at the above account of the whooping cough vaccine taken from the Health Scandal by Vernon Coleman, published by Sidgwick and Jackson in 1988. That's where I stopped on the last recording. More and More Vaccines is the title of this. I will read as much as I'm able for the moment, and if I don't have the time I will continue it in a second part, because there's a lot in here. Not my words, the words of Dr. Vernon Coleman, retired, who does his own podcast, his own writing. He's an author, a doctor, qualified, retired. As the years have gone by, the number of vaccines available has increased steadily. Modern American children receive about 30 vaccinations by the time they go to school. No wonder there's so much autism. A decade or two ago, the only vaccines available were against, and I had them, and my children had them, a relatively small number of diseases, including smallpox, tuberculosis, polio, cholera, diphtheria, tetanus and whooping cough. Today, the number of available vaccines seems to grow almost daily. In the past, vaccines were produced against major killer diseases. Today, vaccines are produced against diseases such as measles, mumps and chickenpox, which have been traditionally regarded as relatively benign inconvenience of childhood. I would agree with that. My Sarah had measles twice, which is rare. She had it at 2 and she had it at 4. She's now 55, but she recovered and had no after effects from the actual disease. So I really think that when they keep bringing out more, it's just too much on the natural immune system for the children. It's just my personal opinion. In the UK, the death rate from measles had dropped dramatically decades before the vaccine was introduced. Today, the incidence of measles is rising again. In attempts to persuade parents to have their children vaccinated against measles, governments and doctors around the world have thought up an apparently unending and hysterical series of scare campaigns. Now that there is a vaccine against measles, by a strange coincidence, stopped being an annoying childhood disease and has instead become a deadly killer. Well, I can tell you from my own experience, they do not die from it. I had 3 children in 3 years. Sarah was the only one who got measles, and twice, age 2 and 4. Unlucky for her, but she's still fine. Nothing ever wrong with her. Scares often consist of claiming that a major epidemic is just around the corner, and that only vaccinations, this fly is really annoying me, can offer protection. I have lost count of the number of whooping cough epidemics which governments have wrongly forecast. Governments and their advisors are either unbelievably stupid, or else they are deliberately lying to help boost drug company profits, which in another way must be bribery, because why do they promote drug companies when they're not always safe? Of course, countless scientists around the world have spent vast fortunes trying to create a vaccine against AIDS, in view of the fact that AIDS may not exist. See later in this edition of VCHL. They may find this trickier than expected. If you're poor and you're in a poor country, your death is really more to do with poverty than HIV and those kind of things. Any scientists have apparently developed a banana vaccine by creating genetically engineered banana plants. There are plans to develop bananas which protect against, sounds a bit of a joke, hepatitis B, measles, yellow fever, and poliomyelitis. Well, would you credit that? Other scientists have developed a genetically engineered potato, which it may be possible to use as a vaccine against cholera. The active part of the potato remains active during the process of cooking, and so a portion of genetically engineered chips could soon be a vaccine against cholera. And Dr. Coleman wrote in brackets, I am not making this up. They just want people's money. That's what it's about, all this vaccine. Money making, billions of billions. They rip the world off. That's my opinion, it's not written here. Naturally, the pharmaceutical industry is constantly searching for more and more new vaccines. I have lost count of the number of times I have read of researchers working on a vaccine to prevent cancer. Every year, new flu jabs appear on the market. There are, so I'm told, vaccines in the pipeline for just about everything, ranging from asthma to earache. There is a planned genetically engineered vaccine which will provide protection against 40 different diseases. The vaccine, which will contain the raw DNA of all those different diseases, will be given to newborn babies to provide them with protection for life. Dr. Coleman has written, oh goody! Well, I think they're mad, and I'm a mother and grandmother. I think they're totally mad. I wouldn't let them near my newborn if I was a young mother. Just let me have the baby, have it at home, and then watch the baby yourself. I don't know about you, but I can no longer keep up with what is going on. I have long since given up trying to work out which vaccines are very dangerous and which are just a bit dangerous, and to whom. Nor can I keep up with which vaccines might work a bit and which don't seem to do much good at all. Does anyone know what the hell happens inside the body when all these different vaccinations are given together? Do different vaccines work with or against one another? What about the risk of interactions? Exactly how does the immune system cope when it is suddenly bombarded with so much foreign material? As far as I'm concerned, my opinion, not Dr. Coleman's, God created our body in his own image and likeness, and if he wanted us to have all these vaccines, he wouldn't have created it the way he did. our immune system, and mine does at 73, works very well. I don't take any medication unless I'm extremely ill, and it's usually doxycycline if I have a very bad chest infection. It's the only medication I will ever take because I have a weak illness, permanent for years, having worked in smoky environments and husbands who smoked and goodness knows what. So I have a weak chest. There's no other medication I want except to help that when I can't cope with what goes on inside there, permanent phlegm. But you don't need all this stuff that they're throwing at you. My opinion. Back to Dr. Coleman. I am an enthusiastic supporter of the principle of preventive medicine. It is usually much easier to avoid an illness than it is to treat one. Vaccination programs are usually sold to the public as though they are an integral part of a general preventative medicine program. But over the years, I have steadily come around to the view that vaccination programs cannot truly be described as preventative medicine, but are rather a part of the interventionist approach to medical care. I will continue because the next one is still on this issue. Doctors refuse to discuss the issue of vaccination. That's the title. One of the big problems with vaccination is that it has for many years been nigh on impossible to discuss the issue of vaccination without arousing great antagonism from doctors and politicians. Many parents who have tried to discuss vaccination programs offered to their children have been startled by the response. Doctors who would discuss other issues in a rational and understanding way suddenly become hysterical when it is suggested that the value of a vaccination program be discussed. Doctors, nurses and health visitors often put a great deal of pressure on parents to force them to have their children vaccinated. It is common for doctors to refuse to discuss the issue, and it is common for doctors to use a great deal of emotional blackmail to force parents to have their children vaccinated. All this is made even more worrying by the fact that these days doctors often have a personal financial interest in making sure that their patients are vaccinated. For example, doctors in general practice often get a financial bonus if they can show that a high percentage of their patients have been vaccinated. I'll add this. Old people are forced and pushed and encouraged and almost made mandatory to have the flu vaccine. It made me very ill in 2016. Very ill. Never had it since. Been fine. I'd rather have flu than have the vaccine. So this is how it's going in medicine. Back to Dr. Coleman. Instead of providing members of the public with the facts that politicians and civil servants have frequently introduced blatantly misleading and downright dishonest advertising campaigns in an attempt to bully patients and parents into accepting vaccination. Diseases which are often short-lived and relatively harmless may be described as deadly and lethal while the side effects associated with particular vaccines are often ignored, minimized, trivialized, or even hidden completely. The reason for that is 99% of people don't read the leaflets. They don't, not until something happens, and then it's too late. They read it afterwards and they've gone blind. That's true, I know someone it happened to. In my experience, it is often extremely difficult to find the truth about a particular vaccine. GPs who rely upon official information from the government probably find it difficult to discover the whole truth. And I suspect that most of the doctors and nurses who are such enthusiastic supporters and promoters of vaccination programs do so because they innocently and naively believe what they have been told and have no idea of the real facts. And that will happen with COVID-19 vaccinations. You wait and see. It's coming. One of the arguments often put forward in favour of vaccination is that if a large enough number of people are vaccinated, then the community will benefit because fewer people will catch the disease in question. I'm glad I'm not on a football pitch because I might say something very rude here. The individual who does not get vaccinated or who refuses to allow his or her child to be vaccinated will be accused of being irresponsibly selfish. I would have thought they showed great love for their children or themselves. In some parts of the world, it is now illegal for parents not to have their children vaccinated. Children in the US have been arrested for not having valid vaccination certificates. Apart from the fact that it is odd to see doctors and drug companies, most of whom are hardly left-wing in their day-to-day approach to life, embracing this curiously communistic approach to healthcare, with the rights of the individual being regarded as less important than the future prospects of the community. The big flaw is that all the evidence shows that vaccination just doesn't work this way. Survey after survey has shown that the incidence of a disease in a community simply isn't related to the number of people who have been vaccinated. Flaws and myths. The whole business of vaccination is riddled with flaws and myths. Here are just a couple of the most obvious ones. First, vaccines simply aren't very effective. Much to the annoyance of doctors and drug companies, viruses and other organisms don't just sit still and remain the same for year after year. They are constantly changing, and new organisms are being formed all the time. Attempts to prevent influenza by giving flu jabs are, in my view, utterly futile, and I say amen to that because I believe that. Every year scientists, drug companies and doctors enthuse about the latest anti-flu vaccine, but each year's new vaccine is based on last year's brand of flu, which has changed, and it will not necessarily provide any protection against the latest flu bug. While your doctor is busy jabbing you and your family with the latest vaccine, a new flu bug is probably on its way from China, Australia, or South America. The result is that vaccines are at best unpredictable and at worst utterly ineffective. During outbreaks of whooping cough, around half the victims are people who have been vaccinated. At least one important study has shown that whooping cough epidemics mainly occur among children who have had the full vaccination course. Research from Sweden and Italy has shown that the whooping cough vaccine is effective in 48% and 36% of those to whom it is given. Hardly reassuring when one considers the risks involved. Measles vaccines are similarly often ineffective. In an attempt to cope with this, doctors usually simply suggest giving booster shots. Naturally, this has nothing whatsoever to do with the fact that abandoning the vaccine would damage drug company and doctor profits, whereas giving booster profits would increase drug company and doctor profits. Measles used to be a relatively mild disease that usually affected children. Today it seems to be a more serious disease which often affects young adults. Measles is now a significant disease among college students who have been vaccinated against it. Incidentally, there is now some evidence to suggest that trying to stop children getting the typical childhood infections isn't a good idea for another reason. It seems possible that children who don't get many infectious diseases in childhood may be more likely to develop cancer later in life. The explanation for this is that those childhood infections help the immune system to develop. Failure rates with other vaccines are also high. There is much evidence to show that the polio vaccine may fail. Some outbreaks of polio seem more likely to affect the vaccinated than the unvaccinated, and one study showed that a vaccination given to protect against meningitis increased a child's risk of contracting the disease by 5 times. Other studies have shown that the vaccine increases susceptibility to complications. The vaccine against tuberculosis has been estimated to be effective between 0% and 80% of the time. The HEAF test, HEAF test, which is used to measure tuberculin sensitivity, can be something of a mystery. False negatives and false positives are possible. A positive test could mean that the patient is allergic to the test, has had a TB infection, or is immune to TB. Take your pick. Second, the side effects, which may be associated with vaccines, are invariably worse than those who give and enthuse about the vaccines are prepared to admit. There is no such thing as an entirely safe vaccine. There are today more people in Germany suffering from vaccination damage than there are people suffering from AIDS. This is probably true for most other so-called developed countries. The amount of money being wasted on AIDS research runs into billions of any currency you like to name. I am not saying that research into this disease is inevitably useless, but that the research which is being done is probably useless. The amount of money being spent on studying vaccine damage is approximately nothing. I repeat that, nothing. Some side effects are relatively mild, but nevertheless inconvenient. For example, the flu jab regularly causes symptoms which are virtually distinguishable from flu itself. Other side effects may be crippling. For example, the side effects which may be associated with the whooping cough vaccine can cause serious lifelong damage. For over 2 centuries, doctors have persisted with vaccination programs despite the fact that there has never been any convincing evidence to show that they work or indeed are safe. Moreover, to their eternal shame, doctors have consistently refused to debate the issue of vivisection and have done everything they could to prevent the public discovering the truth about an activity which has been extremely profitable both for the medical profession and for the drugs industry. I'm going to stop there, folks, because I have to go to church to read, and I do not want to be late. It doesn't start till 11 and it's now 9:43 and I have to wait on buses, or a bus. So I'm going to say God bless, and we'll continue this later, and it'll still be on the vaccine. I'll mark the place and then I will continue. So God bless you, have a wonderful day, and I'll finish this another time. Thank you.